democratic backgrounds and history. So it's a very interesting organisation in which to work because you have colleagues from 47 countries. What are our main activities? Well, it's very simple. We have kind of 3 best-selling products: human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. And if we were to take those, then our best-selling product is probably the European Court of Human Rights, which you've probably all heard of. Recently it was in the news because there was a judgment about the imprisonment of Yulia Tymoshenko in Ukraine. And we're very often in the news in the UK with judgments to do with Avocado and prisoners' voting rights and that kind of thing. So we actually have a very good profile in the United Kingdom, but not always in the right region. So how are we involved in the CIRCOM and the pre-CIRCOM? Last year we signed a memorandum of understanding with CIRCOM, as we have done with the EBU, because we believe in the values of public service broadcasting, so we try to politically support public service broadcasting at a European level. So that's why we're involved in CIRCOM, and why we're involved in the pre-CIRCOM, because obviously investigative journalism is a very important part of democracy. We were saying in the UK, when we had coal mines, coal miners used to take down a bird with them because the bird was more sensitive to methane gas, which is lethal. If you find it in a coal mine, it would kill you, but human beings can't detect it. And we used to call it a thing about sending a canary into a coal mine to see whether it was healthy or not. And investigative journalism, for me, I think for my colleagues in the council, is like that canary in the coal mine. You know that democracy is in a good shape if you can have investigative journalism that exposes corruption and wrongdoing in high places. So basically that's why we're involved. And just a final point, which I think is, it's very interesting that both of the commended and the winner come from Scandinavia, which, as I said before, are the good pupils in our organisation, the model pupils, probably the most democratic countries in the whole world. So if they have corruption problems and they have cases which can be investigative journalism cases, it shows that you can find investigative journalism cases everywhere, not only in the kind of usual suspects countries that I mentioned earlier, but also the model pupils. So I want to shut up there and let you get on with the important part of this hour. But I mean, so, you know, we're very grateful, we're very proud that the investigative journalism category won the whole pre-CIRCOM. And yeah, so enjoy the rest of the hour and congratulations to the 2 commended and the winners.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you very much. Irene and Kay from TV2 in Denmark, who were the commended entry in this category. And the winning programme was called The Sinking Ship, which looked at a series of errors that led to a maritime disaster which killed 2 sailors. And what I'm going to do is just ask you a little bit about how you came to make the film and a little bit about how the challenges you faced, and then we'll show a couple of, I think, a 5-minute excerpt. So if you just want to tell us a little bit about it so we can explain the excerpt, and then we'll take some questions from there. Go ahead. Do you want to explain a little bit about how you came to...
Yeah, we didn't stumble upon the story, but we almost did, in the sense that the tragedy happened in January 2011, and a year later, or even more than a year later, I met the daughter of the drowned fisherman and the sister too. It was a father and a brother that drowned, and I met her at some memorial for the ship that had some had taken up the machine and they polished it, split it apart and put it together again with oil, and she was there to start the engine the first time since the ship sank. And this was a simple VJ story I was out doing, and after I took her down to the harbor to find the space or where her father's ship had been lying. And she started to tell me all about those terrible errors that actually led to a family that was basically divided into 2. There were 4, and now there are only 2 left. And I got very curious, and I remember I called my boss at home, and I heard this woman told me this most terrific this story that it sounds crazy, and I'm not sure she's telling the truth, but I would really like to she has said, and if it's true, it's a story that must be told, and that was how it began.
So it started as a piece of daily journalism that you then took on and made a half-hour documentary out of.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Shall we?
If I just might add that the daughter, we were told that the daughter was not reliable, so we didn't know whether what was right or what was wrong, and so we were very curious about it when we started.
Okay.
Yeah. I think from all sides, even authorities warned us that she had, the numbers she had put together to point, to how do you say, to blame them amongst others, were wrong, and they had even convinced, good friends of our colleagues that said this woman is unreliable, she's in deep grief, but it turned out that we never found one single error from her, the things that she found herself.
Well, it wouldn't be a proper TV conference if we didn't get to watch a bit of television. So let's see a little excerpt from this, and we'll have some questions after that. Run VT, as they say.
They were very willing to speak with us.
And actually, they were almost pissed that there never had been any trial. They said, according to Swedish law, there should have been a trial because there were 2 dead. But this did not happen because of different circumstances. It did not happen in Denmark. So they were very eager to participate.
Having watched the whole piece, the moment, you can't show the whole film. If you get a chance to watch the whole film, I urge you to, where the realisation they could have rescued the guy who was there to be rescued, but they didn't know how, and he died, is a most extraordinary human tragedy. You had a question?
This story is not that known in Sweden. Should be really. Do you confront the captain?
Yeah, he sometimes his phone was dead, and sometimes he never picked it up. And we traced him through. We had 3-4 addresses in Sweden before we actually found his house, and we waited there for some time. But since we had to go back, we had only limited time. We couldn't stay there forever and wait for him to come back. So we never managed to confront him, and he never responded. We lay a letter there on the doorstep.
I know we were saying earlier that it started out as a daily piece of news, it turned into an investigation, turned into a half-hour documentary. But I think in terms of the process of making a half-hour documentary, you say you had fairly limited time and budget to turn it around, which I didn't realise as a viewer, because I thought it was a very high quality standard. But tell us a bit about how the pressures you were under to turn it around.
To what?
To make the film in the amount of time and with the limited amount of budget.
Yeah, I think your question is a good example, because at the end we found the address of the captain, but we had such a tight budget. We did not have the time to stay there and wait for him, because at some time he would have shown up, but he didn't have the time to do it.
Maybe we could have helped you.
Yeah, I think it's a very good address.
I know that because I have investigations on my daily news program, so there's never necessarily, you can always run the story the other day, or the next day, and the next day. My investigations team always say, can I have another week? Can I have another day? Just a little bit longer, because we've nearly nailed the bad guy, and give me another week, we'll nail the bad guy, and you can always, in the end, you can always go on, and sometimes the necessities of broadcasting or hitting your slots or whatever take over. We had a question.
What was the actual conclusion of the programme? Because I feel I'm left a little bit hanging here about the captain, or certainly the responsibility of the Board of Trade or whoever looks after the safety of the ship. If somebody reported a safety issue and it was never acted upon. So what was the conclusion of your programme?
The conclusion was that even though there were numerous errors followed by each other, nobody was ever responsible. Not the captain. He had a fine, I think, for maybe 1,500 euros for not having a night guard. But all the other mistakes that he did, and the fact that he, in 38 minutes, didn't look out of his fucking window. He was never tube with oxygen when they got one of the fishermen off their boat. They managed to put the tube with oxygen into his stomach instead of his lungs. Nobody ever faced any challenges with that. So that's the conclusion.
But after you have had the program, did anything new happen?
Yeah, there's been some political pressure. They're trying to change parts of the laws, but so far the rescue, the whole rescue part, our authorities there never took responsibility. They apologized to them.
And this is because there never was a trial, because then you have to put some kind of responsibility to somebody, but there was no trial, so it was just a program, and you do not have any precedent.
Okay. Can I ask another question here?
Yeah, you showed this identity card, what did you say, with the captain, with his name and all, as far as I understood. And the other sailors or fishermen told this story about what he did and what he didn't do and so, and you haven't talked to him directly. Could you have been in a position afterwards that he would come and say that this is not true, and that you would be blamed for just having the one side, or will the whole program show that you sort of have somebody who contradicts anything anywhere? Do you understand what I'm after?
The right to, the right to reply when the man won't answer his phone or whatever. It's obviously very hard, and he must be the central part. But also the right to reply must come from the authorities for saying why did you not do these, and a succession of mistakes. There could end up being a challenge for a program maker sometimes in a very complicated documentary where you end up, and your program doesn't have this, but I mean it's a problem that we probably all face, is that you do your 5-minute whatever in the news, 5-minute one piece of investigative journalism, and then you spend the next 3 minutes reading out statements from 10 different organisations to try to satisfy the lawyers. So, but I think you got round that. Perhaps your rights to reply were built into the program.
Yeah, we tried to demonstrate that we gave him all chances to actually contact us. We wrote him letters. We tried to phone him, and we even contacted his wife, and she didn't pick up the phone either. But in all kinds of ways, he had the possibility to give his side of the story, and I think it would be difficult for him to say, oh, that is not true, because we very thoroughly only stuck to what we knew for 100% the case was true.
Yeah, we used many official reports, so what we said was documented. And this is also shown in the film.
Can't beat in a difficult investigation having the paperwork and having the documents. You can have as many rights to reply, but if you've got the documents, you're home and dry, as we say, against itself. Any more questions about this particular one? If not, we will move on. We have one over there. Sorry, I didn't see it.
Just a short question. I work as a DJ too. You started the story as a DJ. Did you, when you understood there was more to dig into? Did you change to work with a team then?
Yeah, it was a completely different setup, and it was just a normal day of reporting. As a DJ, I was out, and when I found out that it was maybe something that could be interesting to look into, I asked Kai if he wanted to join, and luckily he said yes. And it's been a very nice way to work together, because Kai is also a great storyteller, so for me it has been fantastic to have this chance to work with somebody who has done numerous documentaries, unlike me. For me it was my first.
That was your first documentary as a reporter? Wow. Impressive. But I still think, to produce that with a team of just two, makes your achievement even more exceptional. So learning more of the background now makes it even more impressive. Okay, well thank you very much. Thank you so much. We might come back back to some more general questions about investigative journalism later on, which would be very nice for you to join in as well. But now we'll meet the winners from SAT in Sweden, not only in the investigative category but on the Grand Prix. And Joachim, I think you have a little presentation for us.
I hope so.
Which we think will work. We believe we have the technology. So the Uzbek affair, which looked into the bribes paid by Sweden's leading telecommunications company to members of the ruling family in the Uzbek government. But I've only tried to explain it as well as you, so I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. I'll give it a go. My name is Joachim Dyfvermark. I'm one of 3 reporters / producers working on the current affair show on Swedish TV produced in Gothenburg. The other 2 are in the editing room because we're broadcasting the 5th story on this topic in about a week and a half, and we have a deadline on Monday. So just arrived to hear from the editing room. As I said, we've done 4 documentaries, 4 stories on 2 different topics. The first one was about how international telecom companies get involved with repressive regimes in their hunt for democratic activists, journalists, human rights activists, and political opposition. The telecom companies provide them with tools in order to monitor and suppress these democratic forces. And TeliaSonera was our example because it's a Swedish-Finnish company. So that was the first angle of the story. And the second one was about corruption. And it was about how the Swedish telecom giant, which is top 8 in the world and top 5 in Europe, with the annual profit of approximately 4.5 billion euros yearly, a profit. How they bribed their way into Uzbekistan when entering that market. So, 4 stories in total, but 2 topics. And it all began with the Arab Spring. We had done a couple of stories on the American rendition of suspected terrorists. One very famous case that we broke back in 2004 about 2 Egyptian citizens that were taken by the CIA from Stockholm to Cairo, where they were imprisoned and tortured. So we got friends in Egypt, and once the Mubarak regime fell, they contacted us and said that they had gone through the security service of Mubarak, and they found Western companies supplying Mubarak regime with different tools. You know, when it comes to cracking phones, when it comes to monitoring people. And that gave us the idea to look on Swedish companies involved in doing business in countries with big problems when it comes to human rights abuses. And we found Ericsson quite soon with their involvement in Syria, and we also found TeliaSonera. And we soon discovered that TeliaSonera was our main focus. TeliaSonera is the old state telecom company where most old Swedes have a pretty naive way of looking at this company. They think it's a state company with orange logo with nice guys, you know, digging phone cables. It was a surprise to us, and therefore we thought it was a surprise for the audience. So we decided to focus on TeliaSonera in total and left Ericsson behind. This is speed dating. I'm doing this quickly and interrupt if there's anything you don't understand. This is TeliaSonera expansion over the past 10 years. They merged with Finnish Sonera back in 2000. And many here has got a cell phone? Hand up. All right, the other way around. Is there anyone who hasn't got a phone? Okay, this is why Telia is working their way east. They need to find growth markets, and in Europe there aren't any. In the around 2003, 2004, they were starting an aggressive expansion east. And today, that Eurasia market is their primary, it's their biggest growth market. It's the most important market for them. And we looked at 5 states, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Belarus. All of them, except for Belarus, was real subsidiaries for TeliaSonera. In the case of Belarus, it's a mixed ownership with Turkcell in Turkey. But we focused on these countries because, with the exception of Georgia, we could characterize them as dictatorships or countries with big human rights problems. And we decided to try to get arguments and proof that would go behind the normal PR agenda of TeliaSonera. When you enter a beautiful country such as Belarus, you have to obey to the conditions provided by the regime. In this case, Alexander Lukashenko, and there's absolutely no way that you're going to enter that country doing any business, especially not telecom, without signing upon all the agreements and the regulation that they demand you to. And this is the prior CEO, Lars Nyberg, with a salary of 100,000 euro per month. He said, and had always said, when there was criticism against their expansion east, that we have a really good code of conduct, we have an anti-corruption policy. There's no difference between legal interception in these countries than compared to rest of Europe. We have to do this. We have to have legal interception to catch drug dealers, to catch pedophiles. So we give the state, the police, the right to monitor the population, our customers, just as we do in Sweden or in Norway or in Spain. We wanted to show and we wanted to prove that there is a big difference in giving these tools to Lukashenko than giving it to, the government in Sweden. That was our goal. We decided to have 2 parts in the research before we started shooting the story. One was to have eyewitnesses, cases from each and every country that we were focusing on. We wanted to show the audience what we really were talking about. Human rights abuses is a word that passes in the news every day, but we wanted to show what kind of dirty business TeliaSonera was actually involved in. We wanted to give a way for the audience to feel what actually was going on. So we started an international research with local journalists, local NGOs in these 5 countries. We focused on Belarus because there's a Swedish connection to Belarus. There was a lively debate at that time. There was a conflict between Sweden and Belarus. So Belarus was on the agenda. And we focused on Azerbaijan because it was prior to the Eurovision Song Contest. I'm going to show you a clip. We took a Swedish girl, an NGO that was present at the election in 2010, and took her back to Minsk to give her to let her tell parts of the story.
Det var här som protesterna mot valfusket ägde rum 2010 i december. Och det var lugnt till en början. Ganska härlig stämning. Ja. Helt plötsligt så... En tjej som sprang förbi med sitt blonda hår faktiskt fullt av blod. Och kollade ut där genom rutan där. Och såg på nära håll hur folk misshandlades och hur försvarslösa folk faktiskt var när de omringades och misshandlades. Så. Nej, men det är tufft det här faktiskt.
Efter att demonstrationerna på valnatten slagits ner började telefonerna ringa hos tusentals människor.
Усі, хто утік з площі, були мани і їм виставиться обвинувачення.
Det kallas positionering, att via mobiltelefoner se var människor befinner sig. Vi talar med en rad personer som är kunder hos Life spårade av regimen. Mikolaj Zemintsenko.
You get the idea. We wanted to show how TeliaSonera was used by the regime to monitor human rights activists. But we also wanted to have documents proving that this was the case and not exceptions. So we came across contracts such as this. This is from Belarus. It's called SORM, S-O-R-M, which stipulates in detail how the security service has total access 24/7 to all the information, text messages, phone calls, financial addresses, whatever. And the day that we aired, the biggest owner, the Swedish state, demanded TeliaSonera to take action to change this, to have a program to restore the trust for this company. And in August, they came up with a 5-step program, how they would change in these countries when it comes to human rights abuses. And they never had the chance to go through that because a couple of weeks later we aired the next program. And that was about how TeliaSonera went into the market of Uzbekistan. This is Gibraltar, a wonderful place where a lot of people hide their identity in offshore companies. This is where TeliaSonera paid their money. It was about 250 million US. And it was a very controversial affair at that time in 2007, but as always, TeliaSonera claimed we have a wonderful anti-corruption program. And what we did was to look into the details. We did what the telecom analysts did not do, and what the financial journalists did not do. They didn't go through the books, but we did. We followed the money from TeliaSonera to Gibraltar, through a wonderful bank. This is their main office, no signpost whatsoever. It's called Lombard Odier in Geneva, Switzerland. This is where most of the money ended up. And the woman they had as a partner, because that was the deal. They went into Uzbekistan, got themselves a local partner. It's the woman on the right-hand side. Her name is Gayan Abakayan. She's the owner of the offshore company, and TeliaSonera claimed that there were no connections whatsoever with her and the regime. The only problem is that we found that she was the personal assistant to the beautiful woman on the left-hand side, and that's Gulnara Karimova, the daughter of the dictator of Islam Karimov. She is also known for the one deciding who to enter the Uzbek telecom markets, and she's known to make huge profits on bribery when it comes to other telecom companies. And we did normal journalistic legwork in doing a social networking, looking at transactions, and we went to the office of TeliaSonera in September with a photo of these two taken from Christian Dior's Fashion Week the same year in June. And we also showed that there were all these connections between the two. And we asked them, did you bribe the family Karimov through this woman? And I don't know whether you saw it yesterday, but it ended up with the communication director leaving the interview. And at that time we knew that they were, you know, the F word. Right after the broadcast of the Uzbek affair, the anti-corruption police initiated the biggest corruption investigation in Sweden. There's a very big Swiss investigation going on. Up until today, they have frozen more assets belonging to Gulnara Karimova than they froze over the whole period of the Arab Spring. We're talking about approximately 700 million Swiss francs only for Gulnara Karimova. And the finance market minister in Sweden demanded an external audit, and it was conducted by this gentleman. He's a lawyer on a big law firm in Sweden. And on the 1st of February this year, they published their report. And an hour after, the CEO for this company resigned, and the majority of the board was sacked. So now this huge multinational company is without a CEO. They have a new director for the board, and they're trying desperately to get their act together and see how they can solve this. The Karimova still owns 6% of the subsidiary in Uzbekistan. It's a tricky thing how to do with those 6%. They're worth about $500 million Swedish krona. What would that be? 50,000, a bit more than 50,000 euros. And they still have all these contracts signed up with the regimes in these 5 countries in order to enter the market in the first place. And I find it very hard that they would be able to negotiate with Lukashenko in order to easen up and limit their access to their clients. So they have a very big problem. Central Asia is the growth market for many international companies, especially European ones. And that's why I think that our investigation and the award that we won yesterday is so important. And this goes for all the international companies entering this region. They have faced the same problems. It's up to us to expose them. That was the speed version. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you very much indeed. Questions?
You talked about 2 were you already kind of developing the second one when
Yes.
the first one? Were you not tempted to put it all in one program?
It went parallel. To start with, our angle, the human rights aspect was the one starting us, and then we realized when we investigated the books of Telia that they had entered Uzbekistan and paying an offshore company, 250 million, and then we felt this is something is fishy. It was pretty obvious, but it went parallel.
Did you ever feel under threat? Because you've been messing around with some very dirty people there. Do you feel, were you looking over your shoulder? Are you still looking over your shoulder?
We were arrested by KGB in Belarus, and we have been threatened by the Karima regime from Uzbekistan. We weren't allowed to enter Azerbaijan, so we had to work secretly with local NGOs doing the recording in Azerbaijan. They received about 3,000 journalists and they refused 3, and that was us. So everybody pretty well knew what we were up to.
I should imagine they won't be letting you back in for another time now.
I don't think I'll try it. But Niels here, the chief editor, has been wonderful because we tried to set up a security program in case something would happen, and since we are freelancers, not employed by Swedish television, it becomes even more important. If I have to take my wife and my 3 kids to fly somewhere or disappear, then it's nice to know that Niels is paying for it.
Similar question to the last group, really. What was the fallout from the program? Telefonera. Did heads roll?
Yes, it's pretty chaotic at the moment. The CEO got sacked the very same day as the audit was presented, and all the board members except 2 were sacked as well. And now they just had a general meeting, and with the new board, no CEO still, and the 2 investigations are running and will be running for at least this year. I don't think they'll go to trial in 2013. It's going to be, this is going to stick to TeliaSonera for years, I think.
Irene, you had a question?
How much time did you spend on this one?
The first one that was aired in April, we worked for 3 months, and then we do other things. In my team, do other things during the summer, and then we came back in August, and we did the September story about corruption, and then we did another story on salmon, totally different topic, and did the 3rd one in December. So it's a bit hard to calculate, but approximately 3 months per story, a little bit less.
When you say we, how many people are working?
It's the team that I belong to, three journalists.
Okay. So you're say obviously the reporter, and they research, produce, film.
Yes, we take turns. In the case of TeliaSonera, I've been the project leader, and now I step down, and the next guy in our group is running.
But you're freelancers, and so you're contracted to.
Well, we're contracted to Niels for 2 years at a time, and had that construction since 2006.
Okay, interesting way of working.
You started by also mentioning Ericsson.
Yes.
Would you say that this is something that most of the big tele companies have been involved in?
In this region, absolutely. You can take Telenor, which is the Norwegian version of TeliaSonera, even bigger. I think they're top 4 or top 3 in Europe. They actually paid the same offshore company when entering Uzbekistan, Takilant. They paid a little bit less. They were negotiating better with Lunara than the Swedes did. But they paid the same amount. MTS, which is a Russian company, paid Lunara $200 million. I would say every company. You have the Karimov family in Uzbekistan, the Aliyev family in Azerbaijan. Quite recently, the ICIJ, the International Journalists Association, presented an offshore database where you can see the Aliyev family having offshore entities. It's the same thing, and it's not connected to telecom specifically. If you don't pay Gulnara in Uzbekistan, you're out. I dare to say that there's not one international company that's not paying bribes on a quarterly basis in Uzbekistan. And I think the same goes for Kazakhstan with Nazarbayev.
Was there any sense any comeback from the business community in Sweden or elsewhere on the argument which I've heard put forward in the UK that you can't judge the standard of the business you need to do in some overseas countries, Middle East and other places? You know, you either pay bribes or you don't get the business.
Yeah.
Did that kind of argument come back as sort of a thrust?
That was their main argument from the very beginning. We only obey the law. We have to sign these documents, and I think that's fine. I mean, if you don't have a code of conduct, and if you're not obliged to follow the United Nations Global Compact or any of the international regulations, if you screw them, you can say, I only follow the law in Belarus. But the law in Belarus sucks, really. It has nothing to do with code of conduct. It has nothing to do with moral or ethics or international law. So that was their main argument in the beginning. But once we showed the effect of their activity, you can't continue saying we only follow the law. When people get arrested and die because they actually have intelligence people sitting 24/7 in their building. That argument did not stand up anymore. It's impossible to bring it forward, at least in Sweden.
Yeah. When you do your investigative part, you obviously end up with some, what you call it, overflux material, excessive material that is not related to your special story, like the Norwegian. And the Telenor with Finn Holcomb, I think.
Yeah.
It's emerged in Norwegian media during the last part of last year. But do you share those information, or?
We've had Norwegian journalists at our office, and we gave them everything there is.
But it would be actually possible for you, when you did this kind of investigative journalism, to actually produce 10 different programs with the same material.
Yeah, in some topics, because over the past 10 years, we've basically only done international stories, and they all relate to international cooperation. In this case, we published together with the Swiss RTS, 0600, the 19th of September, we aired at the same time. We're leading the investigation. They help us. They get all the footage. Niels doesn't know shit about what we're agreed upon. I only ask him, is it okay? And he says yes. And the less he knows, the better. But it's yes, we could. It's also a matter of time. You have to pinpoint your partner abroad that will give you what you need for your own story first. And then after publishing, I mean, we share as much as we can.
I think at a time when everybody's budget's being squeezed, and particularly investigative journalism is an expensive thing, and you have to justify your own existence even more and more. That kind of co-production where you're sharing information with other partners, whether it's other broadcasters or NGOs or universities or whatever, can be quite a powerful way of making your investigation go a little bit further.
Was there any evidence of Swedish engineers and technicians actually in these countries helping them put in these monitoring systems?
We wouldn't be able to do this without a vast array of anonymous sources within Teliasonera. Swedish, Finnish, Turkish, local technicians describing. We knew what door and what code there was into the intelligence hallway. And we had specific details on each and every country, and obviously that had to come from inside, so yes.
Anyone else got some questions?
What's the story about next week?
It's actually the 5th story, and I see that there's a camera rolling. For the very first time, we have Gunnara's handwriting, and that's what I can say.
We've got just a very few minutes left, and I wanted to perhaps, maybe we're all here because we're passionate about investigative journalism. We want to get it on our programs and our stations, but it's never an easy thing to do, and it's an expensive process, and you have to be really passionate about it. And as we have some of the best practitioners of Europe here, perhaps we could ask each of you before you head off, what one piece of advice would you give to a station who's maybe starting out doing investigations or is having to try and justify their investigations that they do? What one piece of advice would you give? Well, we'll go to Joachim first, and then maybe we'll ask you. What would you say?
Can I have 2?
You can have 3 if you want. Take as many.
No, I think that the most important thing is not to rush. I think that each topic has to be ready, and the way we work is that we never present anything to Nils unless we are pretty confident that the story is ready to be told. I think as being a news reporter from the very beginning, it's problematic saying, can I have a week? And then they go to you and say, can I have a week more? And you need to be able to provide what you need in order to say yes. So take your time and be patient. And secondly is international cooperation. Almost any topic today is international. As I said, over the past 10 years, we've been working in every topic internationally, together with a journalist-to-journalist level, and they spend days, weeks with their network, and it doesn't cost you anything. It would be impossible to do it without.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Irene, anything? What would your one message be to stations that work? We're not sure about investigations, but not sure they work for us, but we're kind of interested in it. What would you say?
I suppose that